The idea for this week's project comes from one of our subscribers. Make a carafe and cup that fit together. While sketching ideas, I kept coming back to a thermos. I think I got the design right, but I made one rookie mistake in the execution. I'm using 1.25 kilos of clay for the bottle and 400 grams for the cup. So let's throw the bottle first. I'm using a lightly speckled mid-fire clay. Once I've centered the clay, I flatten. At this point, I want the clay to be just slightly wider than the diameter of the bottle. And now I can push down into the clay. I don't need to leave a lot of clay in the base. I won't be trimming a foot ring on this bottle. I open out and start to form the walls. I use a sponge to compress the base and remove any water. Both of these will help prevent cracking in the base. I'm ready to pull up the walls. This project is great for practicing tall cylinders. Remember to compress the rim every time you bring up the clay. So the key is slow, even pressure, pushing out from the inside and back in from the outside. I'm using my knuckle here on the outside, but you can use your fingertips or even a sponge, whatever feels more comfortable. The sponge can be particularly useful at first if you feel your hands drying out too quickly. Remember to make sure your inner hand and wrist are wet, otherwise the clay will stick. So I bring the clay up to the final height. And I use a sponge on a stick to remove any excess water in there. I smooth and compress the wall at this stage. And now I can form the neck by collaring. And whenever I collar, I pull up the neck just a little. And again. Now, it's quite a wide neck. It has to be for this design to work. And a final shape. I straighten and I shape the neck. I use my flexible rib for the curve. I add a little texture to the neck. And now I don't wire through, I set aside to dry. And onto the cup. It's a simple cup, but it has a step in it. The narrower part of the cup in the base creates a kind of well. This is so the rim of the bottle sits into the well of the cup. This ensures the cup doesn't slide around on top of the bottle. So I check the measurement. And I pull the walls of a cup up to their final height. Now that I've got the dimension of the base of the cup right, I'm going to bring out the walls of the cup to the right diameter. So the diameter of the top of the cup needs to be the same diameter as the bottle where the wall meets the neck. I'm going to angle the sides very slightly so they match up with the slight angle of the wall of the bottle. and I measure again. I trim around the base, and as a final afterthought, I check that measurement of the inner well again just to make sure that the rim of the bottle is going to fit. I didn't wire through the bottle. I'm going to use it as a chuck as I trim the cup. And trimming the cup is simple. I trim across the base and around the foot, and now I can wire through. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to trim the base. Because the clay is still malleable, I gently push the base inwards, and then I lightly roll around the foot. This creates a very natural foot. I set aside to dry fully, and then I bisque fire. It's time to glaze. I'm going to pour glaze into the bottle and then pour out. And I'll do the same with the cup. A quick cleanup of the top. And now I'm ready to glaze the outside. I'll start by dipping the cup. I'm using my hand to hold the inside of the cup. If you find this tricky, you could use a larger bucket of glaze and dip the whole cup. And now I'm ready to glaze the outside of the bottle by dipping. The clay I've used has a light speckle, and I want this to show through. So the glaze I'm using is not opaque. It creates a lovely satin surface and allows the nature of the clay to show through. I'm also leaving part of the bottle unglazed. I think this way of glazing makes the most of the nature of the clay. And so I'm going to pay a bit of attention to the glaze line on the cup. So now it's into the glaze fire. And after a cone 6 firing, my pieces are ready. I'm just drying them after a quick wash. The combination of clay and glaze is pretty subtle, and I like the speckle. So did I get the fit right? Yes, that's pretty neat. And it's definitely giving off a thermos vibe. So let's try it out. Just remember to fill it before you go to bed. Fantastic when you wake up in the middle of the night parched. So it looks pretty good, but what was that rookie mistake? It's not the most amazing pour, and I think it's down to the rim of the carafe. It's squared off. So next time I'll thin the rim right down to create a better pour. Aside from this modification, I think it's pretty easy to carry around, and I feel as if the clay helps keep the water cool. I'm already thinking of making another one with a more retro thermos vibe. For another functional bottle design, why not check out our soap dispensing bottle? And as always, happy potting.